We are back with Fiba rule changes of 2022. We're back from the pandemic, and thank you to all those that reached out asking for this video, submitting clips. I heard you. Sorry, got a little caught up with my career, but I'll continue to grow the game and provide this free resource online. So let's get into it. The order of this video is basically determined by a little bit of a hybrid criteria, basically meaning the ones we go over first will either be quick or have a good pairing with each other, or they're most likely to occur at all levels of officiating. As you can see, the IRS, which is the instant replay system, is near the end because levels of pro and higher are most likely to use that across all federations and countries. And then we have timer and scorekeeper duties that might not be of a huge interest of some referees, but it will be included so that way we can cover all the changes. Compression t-shirts are back. They were allowed, then not allowed, and now they are back to being allowed. As you can see with Dwight Howard, it's nice tight fit to his arms, but not only compression t-shirts, we are allowed compression legs or compression tights as well, as you can see in this photo with the WNBA. Now, the colors remain the same, that everyone has to be one solid color, whatever one they choose, with all undergarments and other accessories. However, they changed the wording to allow compression garments. So remember, this is a compression t-shirt, it's tight to the skin, and if you're to do a test, you can have the player grab the sleeve and let go. If it snaps back tight to that position, clearly a compression t-shirt. This is not a compression t-shirt because one, visually you can see it moving while they're running in the air, and two, if you're to grab it and let go, it would stay like that. It wouldn't snap back to the skin. So legal, illegal. And just to touch on the other small clothing rule change, this is just about the orientation of the numbers on the jersey. So this rule change is great for coaches primarily. The first one is just designating where the team bench is, which is the left side of the scores table. But the crucial thing is they're warming up in front of their bench and they are going in that direction of play to start the game. So a complete change of direction of play. Now, why this is great. One, most coaches only care about the warm-up in the first half because it has the most warm-up time and that's the most organized compared to the second half. They get to coach their defense in crunch time, meaning the defense will be in front of their bench in crucial moments where you actually need to be helping the most and coaching the most is on defense, making defense adjustments versus offense. You can call it a play and go. You can do that from afar. And then timeouts is the biggest thing that helps out referees and coaches. Now that the direction of play is in the direction of your bench in crunch time when you're on defense, now if you get scored upon and you want that timeout, the timer's already looking in your direction versus in last year and previous years, the timer is looking in the opposite direction. And so if you're asking for a timeout, they might miss you, or there might be a delay in reaction time where we have that issue. And this is at the crucial moments of the game. So love that change, not only for coaches, but referees. So that most important thing is getting that timeout in quick when you need it the most. They just altered the wording in jump ball and alternating possession to accommodate for plays where the jumper taps the ball out of bounds. That doesn't mean the officials were getting it wrong. It just adds further clarification that the alternating possession goes to the team that does not gain the first team control of a live ball after the jump ball, as opposed to previous wording that talks about on the playing court. Fiba has brought in a throw-in foul. Now the throw-in foul has the same criteria as an unsportsmanlike foul category 5. And with the addition of the throw-in foul, they removed the category 5 from the unsportsmanlike foul. So basically, unsportsmanlike foul has categories 1 to 4, which you can find more at this video here. And they removed the category 5 and just replaced it under a throw-in foul. Now the throw-in foul has a different penalty, but same criteria. So a reminder on the criteria. A throw-in foul is a personal foul committed when the game clock shows 2 minutes or less in the fourth quarter and in each overtime by a defensive player on an opponent on the playing court when the ball is out of bounds for a throw-in and still in the hands of the referee, or at the disposal of the player taking the throw-in. So when we talk about throw-ins, whether the referee's holding it or it's at the disposal of the player, we can have a throw-in foul. As soon as that ball leaves the hands of the player taking the throw-in, we no longer can have a throw-in foul. Be mindful that even though there's addition of a throw-in foul, the other unsportsmanlike fouls are still in play and can still occur. It's just if this type of criteria is met, it's no longer an unsportsmanlike foul, it's a throw-in foul. So the penalty is slightly different. It's now 1 free throw and possession of the ball closest to where the infraction occurred. So a throw-in for the team that was fouled or the non-offending team at a place closest to where that infraction occurred. The last thing in regards to an unsportsmanlike foul is that there was a change in wording on the category 4, or as people know, as a clear path foul. This is just to clear up some confusion in scenarios of the ball being passed or someone trying to gain control. So here are the 3 things they clarified. So of course we need the baseline criteria that illegal contact caused by a player from behind or laterally on an opponent who's progressing towards the opponent's basket and there's no other opponent players between the progressing player and the basket, and the progressing player is in control of the ball, or the progressing player is attempting to gain control of the ball, so it's a loose ball and they're getting fouled before they get it, or the ball has been released on a pass to the progressing player. And this of course all applies until the offensive player begins their act of shooting. Once active shooting begins, now we can have other unsportsmanlike fouls like excessive contact or no play on the ball, but the clear path / category 4 criteria ends. There are 3 new signals. 2 of them will be more applicable to referees across the world, which is the legal cylinder and the goaltending basket interference. Similar signal to the NBA on their basket interference, but their goaltend is just a simple 2 fingers counted. We use a signal for both. Since the addition of an offensive cylinder last rule change, we have incorporated the legal cylinder signal to showcase when those fouls of cylinder plays occur, whether it's offense or defense. For this signal, you're just using 2 hands to chop up and down, mimicking a cylinder outline. This play shows that the defensive player entered the offensive player's cylinder and was the cause of the legal contact. If you like further examples or explanation of the offensive cylinder, it is in this rule change video. The goaltending and basket interference signal, a very welcome addition, definitely helps to provide visual support on what you are calling, what's occurring. For this signal, you just use your index finger to make a circle around your fist like a ball rolling around the rim. The head coach's challenge signal is using 2 index fingers and drawing a rectangle from the top to the bottom. It is the exact same signal that FIFA football referees use when they need to use the VAR system. We know that the timer and shot clock operator work on reaction time from hearing a whistle. This puts us in situations of did the foul occur before or after a shot clock or game clock horn going. So this change to the wording is to improve the process and clarify outcomes. This also eliminates no player lineups at the end of the quarter because there will always be time on the clock at minimum 0.1. Additionally, they changed that active shooting now counts as a made field goal. When the previous rules, the ball had to be released on a foul call when a shot clock or game clock horn expires. Now, even if you're in there active shooting, like the clip with Brooke Lopez, we will count the basket, put time on the clock, and shoot our free throws. Remember, that is foul in the act of shooting or the ball being released, not a foul occurring, then a new active shooting occurs. So under special situations, they added the wording or have been committed. This is when we have a situation where an act of violence is not recognized immediately, but after something else has happened, like another infraction. This fits the plain definition of a special situation, however, does not fit what their current definition of special situations in Article 42 was, so they add the wording to reflect situations like that. The IRS, or the Instant Replay System. A lot of changes, a lot of additions, a lot of cleanup of wording. For those that don't know, it's basically when the referees go to the monitor to review what occurred. Most of the time it's due to the game clock being stopped due to a whistle, but there are some situations which we'll see that the game clock doesn't need to be stopped necessarily with a whistle. So some of these are straightforward changes, like the crew chief has signed the score sheet. As we know, when the crew chief signs it, they end their connection to that game and authority over that game. So you can only use the IRS till then. Then the next bullet point that adds it, saying that IRS should happen right after the referee stopped the game for it. So that means we're going to see later that we can't have substitutions, we can't have timeouts, we go straight to IRS. So as I just mentioned, when the IRS review occurs, any timeout that started or substitution that has occurred, then we are going to cancel it until the final decision is communicated. This makes sense because after that decision, the head coach may withdraw their timeout request, or they may not want to substitute or make a different substitute. So that IRS decision could affect what they want to do with that timeout or sub. Then it added the interval of play. That way people aren't breaking to their huddles for the quarter break because time might be added to the clock. So that's why the review occurs before, and this wording is just adding that scenario in there. So the top bullet point just talks about what I just said, where interval of play does not begin until the IRS decision is communicated. So the next additions, where it talks about under 2 minutes, we have a field goal released before the shot clock. The referees can stop the game immediately to go review whether that successful field goal was released before the shot clock signal sounded. So it gives you a definite answer if you are unsure because of how close it was. And you also, as a referee, have to identify why you're using the IRS. And it says the timing of the review has to take place after the field goal, the first time the referees have stopped the game for any reason. So it can't be any point after that. The next 3 bullet points just talks about a foul committed away from the shooting situation. It's just adding more wording to cover more scenarios that occur in the game. This addition now allows referees to determine whether the successful field goal was released from the 2 or 3 point area, so they can now stop the game, identify the need the IRS to determine whether it's a 2 or 3. And if some of you watched the playoffs this past year, you would notice it was using the Miami-Boston game where they're trying to determine whether it's a 2 or 3 and ended up finding an infraction on the play where the player stepped out of bounds and they overturned it to a no basket. More wording added to better show what the rule's intent is. So during any act of violence or potential act of violence, it's to identify the involvement of players and persons permitted to sit on the team benches. So the more you read the Fiba rules, the more you can see NBA and Fiba coming closer together in their rules. Because when there's under 2 minutes and a goaltending or basket interference violation was called, they can now review it on the IRS. So this article talks about the process that occurs after the call of goaltending or basket interference was incorrect. So if the ball went in through the basket, we count the field goal and the defensive team will be entitled to a throw-in from their end line. If a player on either team has gained immediate and clear control of the ball, that team will be entitled to a throw-in from the place nearest to where the ball was located when the call was made. Or neither team has immediate and clear control, and in a situation like this, we go to a jump ball. So because they decided that a coach's challenge concept is a good addition to the IRS rule for better understanding, there's a lot of information as you can see here, and it has similarities to the NBA. So we're just going to break it up into little bits so that way it's easier to understand. So any game that has an IRS applied to it, the head coach can request their head coach challenge, which is, as we know, the crew chief verifying the decision by using the IRS in the game situation. The head coach can have one head coach challenge, regardless of it being successful or not. And it's only on game situations outlined in the appendix that can be challenged. We only looked at the changes or additions to the Fiba rulebook. We did not look at all the game situations that's applicable. Time restrictions, there are none. The head coach can challenge at any time and request it at any time in the game. The head coach requesting a challenge should establish visual eye contact with the nearest official and ask clearly for his head coaching challenge. How they ask clearly is by saying loudly in English, challenge, and at the same time drawing out the head coach's challenge signal that we saw earlier in the video. And remember, once they make that contact, they say challenge and they show it, that request is final and irreversible. You cannot cancel it. So after the coach requests that challenge, then at the latest, when the referees have stopped the game for the first time after that decision. So a coach makes a decision, at the latest is the first stoppage by the referees. If the game continues without a stoppage, the referees are authorized to stop the game immediately when they recognize a head coach's challenge, as long as neither team is placed at a disadvantage. For example, if they're on a fast break and you stop it to administer a head coach's challenge, that would be putting them at a disadvantage. So now that has been called, the head coach will talk to the nearest referee to tell them the game situation they want reviewed. The referee will confirm whether that's a requested challenge is valid by seeing if it meets the criteria. Then the referee will notify the scorer that the head coach's challenge is valid and granted. And while they're going through the IRS review, the player shall remain on the playing court. These two are pretty straightforward. If the IRS review shows that the challenge decision is in the favor of the requesting team, the decision is overturned. If it is not in favor of the requesting team, the initial decision stays the same. Referees will use the same procedure as in an IRS review rule. And after the referee has reported the final decision of the IRS review, the game shall be resumed as after any IRS review, like we've shown earlier in the video. So as stated previously, this is just putting the concept into the rule book so there's an understanding of all parties on how the procedures and effects go. There was a small change to the score sheet where they simplified quarter 1 to Q1, same with the other quarters. They put a label beside the timeouts for H1, H2, and OT, so the timeouts used per half and overtime. And they added the HCC boxes, which is the head coach challenge, on the score sheets. For the part on the timer and scorekeeper duties, the scorer that has the score sheet used to notify the referee of when 5 fouls were charged to a player. When a team has requested a timeout, those have been shifted to the timer, the person on the clock. The scorer now has the head coach challenge confirmed by the referees. They shall inform the referees when a head coach requests erroneously his second challenge. So the last portion is about the basketball equipment. This is literally for anyone that just wants to know everything FIBA related on all the changes, but it does not really concern the officials because that's not your job. It is to provide information for those hosting FIBA events so they know what is required. This one just talks about how we can have an on-site test in accordance to FIBA rules to gain temporary approval of the installed equipment, even if it's not FIBA approved. This just makes it more inclusive in scenarios where it isn't FIBA approved equipment, and you can still run the event if they pass the on-site tests. And then they added 3x3 because 3x3 is growing. It's now in the Olympics, and so they have something to link you to the FIBA 3x3 portion. For this one, they're talking about flex rims or breakaway rims. So they just added for level 1 that this is the standard for a level 1 ring. For the backboard support, it talks about recommending safety straps. That way it's designed as a guard in case of failure of a cable in the ceiling mounted units. So just an extra level of player safety in a case of equipment failure. For this one, they just changed the min and max millimeters that ball rebounds to a height for. So it went from a plus minus 100 millimeter difference to a 25 millimeter plus minus difference. This is just to narrow the tolerance for that air pressure to improve uniformity worldwide. This one just talks about that the scoreboard and video board software should be in standard format so that way it can transfer to the TV graphics system. So FIBA has written a standard protocol for it. For the shot clock, all they did was move from a level 1 requirement to a general requirement because their shot clock should withstand direct impacts from basketballs regardless of the level. Every shot clock should be able to make it through that shot clock durability test. Since there is a growing interest for LED glass flooring, which is beautiful for commercial and fan engagement opportunities, but it also allows you to switch between game lines of multiple different sports if you're a multiple sport facility. So they allow that for levels 1 and 2. More additions in terms of safety, so edges and corners shall be rounded off, and it should be able to withstand direct impacts from basketballs according to the ball impact test. And lastly, one more safety addition in regards to stands, telescopic and demountable. As we know, their goal is to have it meet safety protocols, and it should be validated by a qualified engineer by a presentation of structural calculations and providing independent load test reports showing conformance to all national and regional standards and legislation.